Okay, all right, all right. So should we take to make a record of the existence of a quorum? Should we take a roll, or Tim, or is that unnecessary? Or can I just declare
Yeah,
that there's a quorum present?
Yeah, it's not necessary at this point. We can
All right,
just
so we
proceed
have
with the meeting.
yeah. So for the record, we have a quorum. All right. So welcome everybody. So we almost had an in-person meeting. It got this close, and we have Governor Abbott to blame for making it a little more complicated on us on Mayor Adler, but in Austin. But we hope to be around for the leadership meeting in Dayton that Mayor Whaley is planning to host. But it's great to see everyone on the screen. We've got a number of things to go through today. Two general categories of discussions. So the first will be, and we'll launch right into it in a moment, as we always do at the annual meeting, our discussion and consideration of timely resolutions filed and late resolutions filed, and I'll get to that in a moment. We have a slate of those. I would just ask everybody for their patience. I think there's a temptation with Zoom calls like this to bundle resolutions and vote on them all together. I'm not going to do that unless there's a strong opposition to doing them seriatim. But I think just for the sake of hearing them out, or at least recording votes on individual resolutions, I think that's probably the best course. And then we have in an in-person session, we would have had a full panel on a variety of issues, but so we're keeping it a little more discreet today. But I am pleased that we will be joined by Amanda Lefton, who's the director of the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is part of the Department of the Interior, to talk about offshore wind developments. It's an area that we've talked about before, we've discussed before in these meetings, and it's represents a set of programs that the Biden administration has jumped in with both feet. So there's a lot going on there that is relevant to many mayors on all coasts, so and beyond. So we'll open it up for Amanda when she gets here. But let's get right into the resolutions first. And I want to thank you, Tim, of course, for shepherding us through this effort. It's always, as I've noted before, Robert's Rules of Order originated in New Bedford. Captain Roberts, the commander of the coastal artillery battery in our city just after the Civil War, came up with a set of rules, and after he went to a church service that is literally 100 yards from here, if not closer. And so it's with great humiliation that I am bound to screw up at least once the rules during this session, but I know you'll rein me in. And I want to thank Rich Anderson, of course, for all the work that he does for our committee all year long, but especially in getting this meeting together, as well as Dave Burns, the expectant father on the line, who's making sure that we can all connect with one another. Thank you, Dave. So let's get right into it. So here are we have to go through certain housekeeping matters, and I'll try to go right through them. And just, maybe speak up if you want me to hit the pause button at all, but I want to just go right through it. So right now, I just want to say something about the sponsorship of resolutions. If you want to co-sponsor a resolution, you can go to the U.S. Mayor's website or the mobile app, and you have until June 30th to add your name. Using the same website or app, mayors can also register a no vote on a resolution that passes in a standing committee today, which is this committee, but all the other committees. This option is only available to members of the standing committee in which the resolution passes, and is available also until June 30th for members of the committee and other member mayors. You can also register a no vote on any resolution by 5 o'clock Eastern time, July 1st. It says 2020 here, but this must be, actually, no, this can't be June 30th. Rich, what's the right date?
Say again, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
June 30th can't be the deadline, or was it the deadline?
I believe it's August 30th.
It's August 30 and
Yeah.
it's August 30. We got.
All right, this was,
confused as we moved
Rich,
the
this was
date.
this was a test for me, and you put me to the test. I failed.
All right.
It's August 30th. That's the deadline. All right, so for all the mayors on the screen, you can speak to any resolution or ask a question of our speakers just by unmuting your line and giving an indication that you would like to speak. You can do that, using the universal sign of, hey, pay attention to me, just like that, or any other way you think is effective. If you are a mayor and you're not on the screen, just send a chat message to Richard D. Burns, and they'll promote you onto the screen. Please note that only mayors of this committee are allowed to vote on resolutions. I will be asking people to raise their hand in front of the screen so that staff can count votes. I also want to mention that we are joined by, of course, Tim, as I noted, in case we have any parliamentarian questions. So here are the resolutions. So the first item is the consideration of resolutions that including recognizing any new resolutions. So new resolutions had to be sent in by 10 a.m. today and will be considered only if 2/3 of the members present agree, and only after the consideration of the 6 resolutions that we're about to take up. So that's new resolutions. I'll return to that when we're done with the 6 resolutions that were timely filed for today. So as I said, there are 6 of them, and all of them were posted to the conference website. Many of these will be familiar to you because they've been passed in one form or another over the last few years. Some are new, but we'll go through each one. So I'll start with resolution number 39, and this one calls for the reauthorization and full appropriation for the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. And the current legislative, whatever the next legislative vehicle is, but that Congress passed the block and fund the block grant program. This one is one of our favorites. And so the question on adoption is now before the committee. Does anybody wish to comment on that of the member mayors? All right, seeing nobody jumping up and down. This is all.
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I know I'm not a member of this committee, but this happens.
You're always welcome, Brian. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate it, Mayor Mitchell. I just want to let for those other mayors that are on the call that this is a resolution in support of basically a program that we were able to get funding for back in the ARA days, back in 2010. And I know my member of Congress, Chairman Frank Pallone, is championing this in the infrastructure package. Currently on the House side, I believe there's like $3.5 billion in change. On the Senate side, Senator Manchin only has $500 million towards this program. But either way, the good news is that we're in the mix. It's being spoken about, talked about. And I think by the conference being supportive of this will help it go a long way when the House and Senate conferees get engaged after the House passes their version of the infrastructure package.
Yes. Yeah. No, thank you. And, Brian, I just want to say, thanks for all the work that you've done over the years in advancing the Energy Block Grant Program. It's something that near and dear to all of us. And it's, in some ways it's, falls into the category of things like, motherhood and apple pie that
Yep.
mayors are all for, but it takes work and you put the work into it. I do think, the Senate bill didn't have nearly as much as we wanted.
Yeah.
But the fact that Senator Manchin put it in there, of course, makes it much more readily conferenceable. So,
Yeah.
So it's looking good.
Yeah.
And it's a tribute to, you and all the other mayors that have done the spade work over the years. So any other comments?
All right, if
All
I
right.
could, Mr. Chairman, just mention to you and the rest of the committee, every one of the resolutions that you're looking at today have been in joint jurisdiction. They have all been adopted by other committees without modification. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks for noting that, Rich. Yep. Yeah. So, all right. So all of those in favor of this resolution number 39 signify your endorsement by raising your hand. All right. All right. And is there anyone against? All right. Seeing none. The resolution passes. Okay. We'll move on to, thank you for that. So then we'll move on to resolution number 40. So this concerns the support. So this one's styled as supporting a clean energy transition by 2035. And just by way of description, again, this is this one has been filed in a timely way and has been available on the website. The conference has supported, of course, a transition to a 100% clean energy economy in America's cities by 2035 by all available means, including federal lobbying and issue act, because that's what it proposes. It proposes the support of the conference to a 100% clean energy economy by 2035. So that is the gist of it. It isn't mandatory. It's emphatically aspirational. That's the way I would characterize it. So I'll open it up for any comments or questions by member mayors or other mayors. All right. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and put it to a vote. So those who support this resolution indicate your support by raising your hand. Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, thank you. The resolution passes, number 40. So we'll go to 41. This concerns the conference's support for cities race to zero. That's what it's styled as. So this resolution urges cities to join the Race to Zero, a global campaign led by the UN high-level climate champions for climate action. Cities are urged to pledge to greenhouse gas reductions and net zero by the mid-2040s or sooner. So it is similar to resolution number 40, not contradictory, arguably less ambitious, but still in the same vein. So I'll open it up for questions or comments. All right, seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. If you are in favor of this resolution, indicate your support by raising your hand. Okay, very good. Any opposed? All right, very good. The resolution passes. And moving on to resolution number 42. This one is styled as, says here, in support of equity, green jobs, and building retrofits. So this resolution urges Congress and the administration to continue to implement an all-of-government approach with additional and regular appropriations to provide technical assistance, capacity building, and other supports to improve building codes and performance standards across the country that prioritize urgent decarbonization, safety from extreme weather and climate change, public health, and racial equity. A whole lot in there. So I'll open it up for comments, questions, debate, random musings. All right. All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and put it to a vote. If you favor resolution 42, indicate as such by raising your hand. Okay, any opposed? Seeing none, all right, the resolution passes. All right, now we are at resolution 43, which urges Congress to invest in transportation electrification. Specifically, it urges Congress and the Biden administration to restore $174.5 billion for transportation electrification from the president's Build Back Better agenda in the bipartisan infrastructure deal, the reconciliation package, or any future legislation on the topic. So it's all for transportation electrification. Well, we'll go ahead and open it up for comment or debate. All right. Hearing, Mike Cahill, go right ahead.
I'm just going to say hi. I mean, I was going to say something on the last one. It was more of a question. Maybe I'll get you later. But these resolutions all seem spot on, as does this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All right. Anybody else other than Mayor Cahill? All right, very good. All right, so we'll go ahead and put that to the vote. So if you are in favor of resolution 43 concerning transportation electrification, indicate so by raising your hand. All right, anyone opposed? Okay, as far as I can tell, it passes. All right, very good. So, and then there we have the last one here, which is one that has been passed in some form several times over. It's one that is championed year in, year out by Mayor Goodman of Las Vegas. And it calls on the U.S. Department of Energy to prioritize the treatment and storage of radioactive waste on site to reduce health and environmental impacts from transportation of waste produced from decommissioned nuclear facilities, and move towards a consent-based approach to selection of sites for disposal of nuclear waste. In other words, don't send your waste to Yucca Mountain, she says. So this is something that passed here several times over and has received considerable support. So I'll open it up for debate. All right, hearing none, indicate your support for this resolution by raising your hand. Okay, any opposed? Very good. That passes as well. So all 6 of the resolutions assigned to the Energy Committee passed without amendment. And so we'll go to the possible introduction of new resolutions. So according to the rules, again, a 2/3 vote without debate is required to allow a new resolution to be considered. And so I'll put it out there. I think, Rich, I don't know that are we aware of any new resolutions?
There are none.
There are?
There are none, Mayor.
There are none. There are none.
The only one that came in was the Blue Star families from President Mayor Nan Whaley, and that'll be dealt with another committee, but that's in support of military families, and you'll hear more about that later. Not in this meeting, but August 31st meeting.
All right. So, Rich, that does it for resolutions, correct?
That's it, sir.
You know, boy, we all did a great job. We moved right through it. Lickety split. All right, so fast that I don't even think our guest is on. Is Amanda Lefton in the house?
Mr. Mayor, did not see her.
Okay, all right. So we're actually early. Boy, maybe I should just make up a resolution, Rich, and we can debate it for the next 7 minutes. So fill the time. No, I would just, we could do this. We could take, does it make sense to take a 5-minute break? Or I can just do a little soft shoe to keep everybody entertained. Mike, what do you think? Mike Cahill?
I'll go for the soft shoe.
I got a question, unless you need to get away from the screen for a couple of minutes, John.
No, go right ahead.
So on the building electrification and the building retrofits, we've been kind of casting about in Beverly. For those of you who don't know, I'm a neighbor of Mayor Mitchell's. We're about 2 hours from him on the North Shore of Boston. Beverly's a city of about 43,000. We've got several thousand housing units that are all about 115 years old from when an old shoemaking machinery factory was built. So it's all, it's all wood frame, it's 2-family, 3-family and on up. And we used to get CDBG funds. We were a casualty of the changes in the program in the early 2000s. And so for housing rehab, which really now is all about deep energy retrofits, right? We're trying to figure out where to get some seed money to get ourselves going, because, we know that we want to move people to get those buildings to be much more energy efficient, and where possible, get them over to electric in preparation for the grid being much greener. But just getting started with a source of funding, we're looking at the ARPA funds and the fact that you can do housing work, and we've got a census tract that covers most of that part of town, and but we're just trying to figure out what the.
Well, I mean, I guess my initial reaction is well, twofold. One is that there is probably a good faith argument that ARPA funds could be used, as you noted, as as a way of enhancing housing options in a qualified census tract. And even if some of the housing is outside the census tract, I think you're still, if it's an underserved, if it can be established that you're dealing more or less with an underserved population, then you're probably in business. And then separately from that, the energy block grant program, I presume, would allow. I mean, obviously the regulations have to come out and be updated and all that, but assuming it's passed, but I would think that those sorts of things would be would work. I mean, those rationales would work. I don't know if anybody sees it. Rich, do you agree?
Yeah, yes, and I would add that Senator Manchin, in the bipartisan infrastructure framework, he was very successful in getting in a $3 billion revolving fund loan program for building weatherization. Now, you can call that retrofits, weatherization. Public buildings are included as eligible. Now, this has to go through the infrastructure bill, needs to get approved, and or it will be in the reconciliation. But this is a sizable amount of money for that. And you know how this works. It goes to the state and then to these committees, action committees, community action. So that is coming, and that's going to be a major change in the weatherization program on a going forward basis. Now, it's not grants, but it's low interest loans. And here's an interesting thing in the water business, what we found from the utility stuff was that if you go for these, if you're going for either a grant for your lead pipe removal or a loan to do new pipes or something like that, there's a requirement in all of this that 40% of the amount allocated has to be for low income. So the key to getting the loan, which would be perhaps a no interest loan, is your concentration of low income and how you're applying it. So this, I find this to be very advantageous on the energy efficiency block grant. 50% of the funds used in 2009, 2010 were for building retrofit and weatherization. So Mayor, you're absolutely correct. That was the single biggest use of those funds. And Department of Energy had to write rules on how you use the funds, just like Treasury's doing now on the rescue plan stuff. And they sanctioned it. So we're good for that purpose.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful, Rich. I think Mayor Cahill, you've got some options.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And Rich, I think I might just try to catch up with you next little bit on all that, if that's all right.
You bet. All right. So I see Director Lefton on the line, as it were. And so we can launch right into our next segment. We've had, over the last few years, we've had programs before this committee concerning the development of the offshore wind industry, and you know, it's been a slow rollout over the last decade, you know, and I've been accused by many of our colleagues waiting for Godot. Now it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and you know, this is an industry that has matured over the last 30 years in Northern Europe to the point where there are over now in the North Sea and slightly beyond over 3,000 wind turbines turning. And in US waters, there were a total of 7, 5 off of Rhode Island and 2 off of Virginia. So the United States is, you know, at the turn of this year, found itself way behind, but things are starting to change and change dramatically with President Biden's election. The last administration, I think it's no secret, was cool to offshore wind for a variety of reasons, some unknown, some known, and some unsuspected or merely suspected. And but now, among all the initiatives of the Biden administration so far to stimulate green energy industries, the one at the top of the list right now is offshore wind, because it's been so pent up and so ready to go, and it just needed the federal green light. And in the last few months, we've seen considerable activity, and the person leading that charge is Amanda Lefton at the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. And I'll just tell you a little bit of background about BOEM, for those of you who don't know it. So every level of government has a role to play in offshore wind. You know, at the local level, at the municipal level, it has everything. We have responsibility over things like port infrastructure and workforce development, and like everything that we're ordinarily in charge of. You know, when it comes to education and neighborhood support. At the state level, the states play a big role in their authority to regulate utilities. And so it's through state solicitations of the wind industry to propose offshore wind PPAs that makes the market in essence. And so we've seen great activity up and down the East Coast, ranging primarily from Massachusetts all the way down to Virginia, but it also includes even North Carolina and Georgia, and even going north up to Maine, and as well as the other coasts around the country. So the federal government has control of the Outer Continental Shelf under its authority, under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. And historically, the work of BOEM has been in oil and natural gas, and that has, BOEM has, in the last 10 years, has pivoted its attention considerably. And on Amanda Lefton's front burner is offshore wind. She comes to BOEM from New York, where she was instrumental in launching what is arguably the most ambitious state initiative around offshore wind, and did a fabulous job there, so much so that President Biden said, "I need you to kickstart this thing for me." And so then she's done that. And first with and most prominently with the effective approval of the Vineyard wind project, which will be the first utility scale project in the United States, launched from just a few hundred yards, about a half a mile from here, right out of the port of New Bedford, but with many projects on its heels. And so, and not just on the East Coast, but the Gulf, the West Coast, Hawaii, Alaska, and the Great Lakes. And so all to follow at varying points in time. So we want to invite her today just to talk about the administration's aspirations, and more particularly its aspiration of having 30 gigawatts of installed offshore wind generation in the next 10 years, and how she sees things rolling out, and the role that and why mayors should be paying attention to this at all, not just the ones on the East Coast. So, Amanda, great to see you, and we really appreciate your joining us. We had hoped that we'd have this in person. We'll have to take a rain check on that, but we're so pleased that you were able to make this to help spread the word about offshore wind generally, but more particularly what's happening and how it's relevant to mayors around the country.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I have to say it's a particular pleasure, for all of the speaking engagements I've done so far on behalf of BOEM and the Interior. I don't think I've ever been introduced by anyone who actually knows what BOEM is. So just appreciation and honor, and I think that's a real reflection of your partnership and your leadership and your engagement on offshore wind and these critical issues over the years, of which I'm very grateful for. It's wonderful to see you again. And so as Mayor Mitchell already said, I'm Amanda Lecht. I'm the director of the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM. And I really, again, express my appreciation to the entire Energy Committee for inviting me to speak here today. I think the U.S. Conference of Mayors in particular is such an important organization. Republicans, Democrats, independents have all been working on ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions since 2005 and before then. And I'm so excited to be here today to share the federal government's strategic vision for offshore wind energy and really find opportunities to collaborate between the federal government and local governments and city governments, because I do believe that the opportunities are really important that are before us, and we have to work together in order to seize those. So just a little bit more of a primer for those of you who aren't familiar with the Bureau. BOEM is a federal agency tasked with managing the energy and mineral resource development in the Outer Continental Shelf, or OCS we call it. And we are guided by rigorous science and knowledge-based environmental review and analysis. So our responsibilities include managing conventional and renewable energy resources, as noted, as well as sand and gravel resources for things like coastal restoration projects. And of course, we're the lead regulatory agency for offshore wind. And a lot of exciting things have happened in the past few months under the Biden-Harris administration. So I'd actually really like to start by sharing BOEM's vision and mission for offshore wind, which is first, we're driven by the need to act on climate. We know we have to transition to a clean energy future and know that offshore wind can play a critical role in meeting the country's energy needs. Two, when we think about climate, we think about jobs, and offshore wind can create thousands of good paying union jobs and a robust supply chain across the United States. Three, we need to develop offshore wind responsibly. We need to avoid impacts to ocean users and the marine environment where possible, and rely on knowledge and science to inform our decisions, with an eye towards environmental justice and providing economic opportunities for communities who have been left behind or historically marginalized. Fourth, we need to robustly engage. We need to engage tribal nations and ocean users, local governments, state governments, partners, stakeholders. And finally, we need a smart and transparent process to provide greater certainty to the industry and stakeholders alike. And I'm pleased to be here today to say that we have already made significant strides to make this vision a reality. Increasing renewable energy development on public lands in US waters is a priority for the Biden-Harris administration. And the administration is taking an all-of-government approach towards its ambitious renewable energy goals that will combat the effects of climate change, create jobs to support families, boost local economies, and help address environmental injustice. This spring, the Department of Interior, along with the Departments of Commerce and Energy, came together to set an administration goal to deploy 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030, which will create nearly 80,000 jobs. Those jobs will support families, put food on the table, and help us build back better than we ever have before. And here at BOEM, we're playing a critical role in implementing the administration's strategy to transition to a clean energy future. So to date, we've leased 1.7 million acres of the US Outer Continental Shelf. We have 18 commercial leases in the Atlantic. We plan to advance new lease sales and complete the review of at least 16 construction and operations plans by 2025, which alone represent more than 19 gigawatts of new clean energy for the nation. And I'll say that the administration's commitment to renewable energy is reflected in BOEM's budget. The fiscal year 2022 budget proposes additional funding in support of stakeholder engagement, science, staffing, and this will help increase our capacity to help facilitate the nation's transition to cleaner energy sources that are both safe and environmentally sound. The budget also supports growing offshore wind capacity in a manner supportive of disadvantaged communities. So should the fiscal year 2022 budget advance, BOEM will be well positioned to build on the significant achievements that we've made already. So Mayor Mitchell already pointed to the fact that earlier this year in May, the Department of Interior and BOEM took a historic first step and approved what will be the first major commercial scale offshore wind project in the United States. The 800 megawatt Vineyard wind energy project will create 3,600 jobs and importantly be built with union labor. We learned a lot of lessons from Vineyard Wind, and those lessons will be applied to future projects to ensure we have an efficient and transparent process moving forward. And since that announcement, we've made significant progress on identifying wind energy areas on both the East and West Coasts. We've advanced in the new proposed sale notice for the New York Bight, which could mean up to 8 new lease areas. And included in that for the first time is a labor provision as a lease stipulation to drive towards union-built projects. We've also increased engagement with ocean users like the commercial fishing industry, critically important to the success of our shared goals. Also in May, the Department of Interior, Department of Defense, and the state of California announced an agreement to advance areas for offshore wind off California's northern and central coasts. There's a roughly 399 square miles of central coast and a Humboldt Call area off the northern coast, which together can support 4.6 gigawatts of offshore wind. Which will enable the build out of significant new domestic clean energy over the next decade or more. In July, we sought feedback from the Regional Carolina Long Bay Task Force on elements to include in a future sale off the coast of North Carolina. Last week, we published a final environmental impact statement for South Fork, in the waters offshore Rhode Island, a project that is contracted with the state of New York. And we'll issue a record of decision based off of that analysis in the near future. And if approved, South Fork will become this nation's second commercial scale offshore wind project approved under the Biden-Harris administration. We've advanced 6 projects already towards environmental review in the last 7 months, with more to come this year. And we expect to hold lease sales for the New York Bight by early next year, offshore the Carolinas in 2022, and offshore California. And I'll say that these efforts and others like it demonstrate a sea change for offshore wind. In order to make these opportunities a reality, BOEM is focused on driving progress on reviewing projects and advancing lease sales, enhancing our process to create greater certainty for the industry, state and local governments, tribal nations, ocean users, and other partners and stakeholders is a critical part of that effort. We need to advance both an efficient and effective process for reviewing plans to develop existing leases and an inclusive and expeditious process for identifying areas for potential future lease sales. Under Secretary Haaland's leadership, the department is working to improve its consultation process to identify best practices and strengthen its relationship with tribal governments. And I'll say BOEM is fully committed to this approach. We also continue to prioritize protecting marine ecosystems and using science, monitoring, and traditional and historic knowledge to guide our decisions. All that said, outreach and public engagement is another critical component to ensure a responsible offshore wind development process. We work closely with our diverse stakeholders and ocean users through a project's development process to ensure that early communication is there to help manage potential conflicts. And public engagement can lead towards real-world results. Thanks to the input from the maritime community and the commercial fishing community, We not only removed more than 900,000 acres from consideration in the New York Bight areas, we're also proposing transit corridors as part of the New York Bight proposed lease areas. This summer, and thanks to Mayor Mitchell's participation from his team, we held a series of working meetings with the primary fisheries operating in the New York Bight, and we'll continue to work with all of our stakeholders on offshore wind projects across the country to ensure that everyone's concerns are being heard and considered. But we also need the industry to do its part to engage with stakeholder groups and ocean users throughout the process. And so we're taking steps to ensure that there are requirements in place so that the offshore wind industry is engaging early and often with critical ocean users like the commercial fishing industry. As you can see, BOEM is working hard and doing our part to help the administration meet its offshore renewable energy goals and increase confidence in the supply chain development investment to meet demand of planned projects. But the federal government can't and should not work alone. The success of US offshore wind depends on a number of entities working in harmony, including that of local governments. And fortunately, the efforts of state and local governments, industry, and other stakeholders are creating the collaborative atmosphere necessary to advance offshore wind and provide healthy economic development. With several potential projects nearing their construction phase, the focus on infrastructure and supply chain investments is increasing. States and industry have taken the first steps to seize this opportunity here in the US, and here are some of the things we're seeing. We saw a commitment from 2 offshore wind developers to use a commerce terminal as a staging area and development base for projects offshore Massachusetts. The construction and manufacturing facility of a manufacturing facility in New Jersey to supply wind farm monopiles. The construction of a Jones Act compliant offshore wind installation vessel in Texas using 14,000 tons of domestic steel, mostly from Alabama and West Virginia suppliers. The transformation of part of a steel mill in Pennsylvania into a monopile foundation manufacturing facility in partnership with the steel workers. The construction of a foundation manufacturing facility in Rhode Island to support the assembly of the Northeast offshore wind farms. The construction of the first US offshore wind towers and transition piece manufacturing in a facility in New York, in upstate New York, even so. And as you might have heard yesterday, the construction of the first US offshore wind substation in the United States. So it's clear already that we're seeing real investments, real jobs, real opportunities coming from this industry, thanks to the partnerships we have with state, local governments, industries, and others to make this industry a reality in the United States. And in addition to these exciting investments, states and industry can leverage existing infrastructure to serve offshore wind development. We're seeing from the Pacific to the Gulf and the Atlantic coasts and places all in between that many of the components necessary to foster a favorable business environment for offshore wind manufacturing and supply chain are already in place. Mature industrial bases, extensive manufacturing experience, and highly trained workforces, and a history of offshore energy development right here in many communities all across the country. And of the developments I've discussed, combined with a growing nationwide interest in and demand for offshore wind energy indicate that the country is well positioned to not only transition to a renewable energy future, but to lead on the global stage when it comes to clean energy development and deployment. There is no doubt that the Biden-Harris administration's offshore wind agenda is ambitious, but it's also realistic and achievable, and it's absolutely necessary. Climate change poses an existential threat to all of us, to families on the coast coping with sea level rise, to communities in the West facing wildfires and extreme drought, and to those who are protecting their traditional life all across the country. And the time to come together to act is now. Transitioning to clean energy will be critical to help the US tackle this issue. And I'll say American mayors understand how important it is for our nation to develop and transition to a clean energy future. You've known it and you've worked on it for years. You've engaged with legislators to promote clean energy job creation and spur investment in renewable energy. You've developed a cities-led movement to address the growing threats of climate change and adopt real-world climate solutions. In cities, both large and small, mayors are leading the way to identify innovative solutions to address climate change and working together to build a sustainable and resilient future. Offshore wind can help power communities across the nation and be a part of the climate solution while reaping the benefits of clean energy and job creation, especially in underserved communities. This is particularly true for our city and local governments, and not just those along the coast. The social, economic, and environmental opportunities that offshore wind industry growth presents can be a boon to local governments all across the country. But the full benefits of this energy can only be realized if we all come together to ensure all potential development is considered and advanced responsibly. I know that coming together includes ensuring that local governments have a seat at the table and city governments lie at the heart of our nation's communities. As such, you all need to be a part of the offshore wind conversation, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here with you today. We look forward to working with everyone as we continue to advance the administration's climate and renewable energy goals and help create a cleaner, more equitable energy future for our nation. Thank you again for having me. And I realize I went a little over time, but if we have time for questions, I'm happy to have a discussion.
No, that was great. That was great. You covered a lot of grounds, and I think so. I'm going to open it up for questions. Maybe I'll just take the chair's prerogative to kick off with one. Although, I tried to come up with a couple of questions off the top of my head, but you were so comprehensive that I think you covered them all. One thing I will note, just by the way, again, as a point of underscoring the relevance to mayors, is that what you touched on before about the cities that are involved in this now. So like Albany is a good example. It's nowhere near the ocean, right? So, but Mayor Sheehan up in Albany, is very proud of the fact that a big factory that will make offshore wind foundations is being constructed right now in her city. But the same can be said for a number of other places, up and down the coast, and eventually this industry is going to make its way to the Gulf. It is already making its way to California. You guys don't have jurisdiction over the Great Lakes, but the mayor of Cleveland is very, very much interested in making his city a launching pad for the industry in the Great Lakes. To see Mayor Bliss from Grand Rapids on the line, I'm sure that the Great Lakes will be a big part of this eventually, and maybe even bigger than a lot of what happens off of the East Coast, even at least conceivably. So one of the things that I've found over the years is that when it's hard to convince people just like that this stuff is real, but once people start to see the wind components being deployed from sites along coastlines and get to appreciate just how big these things are, and that they're being moved around, and that tons of money will be spent on them, that the potential is there for a lot of great economic activity in our city. So on that, but it's not going to be easy. And so my question to you is, and you covered this, what do you see as like the major obstacles, right? So the president has this fairly arguably lofty, but inspiring goal of 30 gigawatts by 2030. That's a mere 9 years away, right? It's going to take a lot to get there, but and a lot has to happen. You noted that everybody has to be pulling in the same direction. Like what among all the things out there that are real obstacles, especially those that have some connection to cities, what are they to your mind as you've been on the job for a half a year now?
Sometimes it feels like a blink of an eye, and sometimes it feels like an eternity, Mayor, all at the same time. So, I think there are a couple of obstacles that I see as challenges and opportunities. You noted earlier how many wind turbines we have. That's 42 megawatts, and we're talking about getting to 30 gigawatts in less than 9 years. So that's a really significant build out that is, truthfully much faster than we saw in other nations. We know, right, that we have a much more mature industry now. We know that this is achievable. But I think the scale is something that we know is ambitious, but we also know is important and is urgent, and that we can make it happen. I think in order for us to do that, we need to have very strong coordination with all of our federal, local, and state partners. There are a lot of different levels of government, as you noted earlier, that are involved in this process. And in order to be successful, we need to collaborate and be aligned in order to make this happen. So I think that all of government approach that the president has been very clear on and he has directed his agencies on, I feel that we have a real mandate here to work closely with our partners and other agencies like NOAA is very clear. And I would extend that to say that we need to be working with all of you in states. So I think that collaboration is going to be another obstacle and opportunity. And then the last thing I'll say, and that really speaks to, I will say, the process, right? Because we need to review a lot of projects and we need to put new lease areas on the table. And so that's going to be a really important thing for us to get right and work closely with other partners on. And then the last opportunity I'll say is, you know, we're not alone in the United States with, you know, a great demand for this energy. Other countries are also scaling up offshore wind. So the question is, how are we going to ensure that we have the adequate infrastructure in place in our supply chains here in order to ensure that we're successful? And I think that is an incredible opportunity for us to say, we're going to have manufacturing in the United States in our local communities. We're going to source this locally. We're going to create these jobs. We're going to see these investments here. And I think that that sort of global challenge and that global demand really helps us focus on the fact that we need to create that local supply chain here. So both a challenge and a great opportunity for our local communities and the nation.
Great. No, thank you for that. All right, let me open it up to mayors with any questions or any questions. Mike Cahill of Beverly, Massachusetts. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Director Lefton, thank you. Here, this maybe a quick one. You know, I love what I'm hearing. I want to see as many gigawatts as we possibly can cite. As the ocean temperatures are warming and certain marine life are chasing the temperatures that suit them, which is moving commercial fishing around and also as moving around some protected species. How do you work through all that with the siting? How is that all going?
I will tell you, Director Lefton, that is, I did not plant that question with Mike Cahill.
I assumed you two were texting as the presentation was. So it's a great and really important question. You know, I touched on this a little bit, but to really hit it home, we do a robust environmental review for every single project that comes before us, a full environmental impact statement. And we partner with NIMS, the National Marine Fishery Sanctuary folks, our partners at NOAA, who do a biological opinion on critically endangered species and marine mammals, for instance, like the North Atlantic right whale. And throughout the entire process, we look really hard at the data that we know that's there and the science. So just to dive into that a little bit more. We at BOEM alone, we have a very robust science program, and just related to renewable energy, since we have a few programmatic areas at BOEM, but just related to renewable energy, we've invested $70 million in science so that we can really have a full understanding of what this looks like and the impacts of offshore wind and how we can do this right. Critical to how we move forward and approach this is ensuring that we have strong mitigations in place for critically endangered species like the North Atlantic right whale. What's important is, first, we need to go to areas that we think the North Atlantic right whale are not there. But two, we consider a series of mitigations for something like that large marine mammal throughout the process. So that includes restricting pile driving during certain times of year, or ensuring that vessels are moving at a slow speed when those are in the area. So I'll have to say these are just some examples of the sort of the broader, first we want to avoid areas, that's where we want to start, that we know what they are, and then two, getting into real specifics on mitigation measures that we include in our record of decision and our environmental impact statement. Now, you raise this other issue with respect to climate change and the fact that that's moving species. And it's, that means to me, we absolutely need to transition to a clean energy future because we need to mitigate and combat these effects of climate change. But we know that also the livelihoods of many Americans depend on ocean uses, like the commercial fishing industry. And so critical to us is really having upfront engagement with the commercial fishing industry. And so we've tried to do things a little bit differently for the New York Bight, which will be the next lease auction that we hold. And essentially what we were doing here is not only did we first try to avoid areas of importance to the commercial fishing industry first, then we tried to hear feedback and incorporate something like transit lanes, which was what was asked for from the commercial fishing industry. And then in addition to holding specific gear type meetings with them and having really robust engagement, we're pre-decisional, I should say. We've not moved forward with our final impact statement, where we pose questions about having robust engagement with the commercial fishing industry so that before we even get a project, I don't want to see a project from a developer until they've consulted with the commercial fishing industry on how to best incorporate their concerns so that all of those issues are really brought up front. So Mayor, I threw a lot at you, but I think the key principles here are putting science on the table, doing what we can to avoid impacts up front, and trying to mine for any issues as early on in the process as possible so that we can ensure that they are addressed throughout the process.
Great.
Thank you.
So I don't know if we have any other questions. I know we're running up against the hour here. Is there any, we'll take one more if there is one more. Anyone going once, going twice? Yeah.
I'm happy to make myself available if anyone has any follow-up questions. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Director Left. We really appreciate it, and a lot of work to come. And it's really exciting stuff, and you're the one leading it. So congratulations on that, and it's been great working with you as well.
It's a tremendous team effort. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Good to see you, Mayor.
Okay, so I think that does it. Any housekeeping matters at all? Rich, anything that you wanted to convey to the mayors on the committee?
I think we're pretty good for now, Mayor. We will be sending you some documents on what's going on with the BIF and with the reconciliation. One of the reasons why you're not getting a ton of stuff now is because it's changing overnight. And what I send you today will be obsolete tomorrow. So we need a little space, but there are some very good energy programs that will come out of the infrastructure package. We need to see how it progresses to the funding part of it. And that'll happen this fall, September, October. I think we'll have a lot more information for you then. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, no, thank you again, Rich. Thank you, everybody, Dave and Tim, for helping put this together today. So I think the big thing just going forward into the fall, and we hope to have an in-person meeting in September and October for the leadership meeting. But either way, the big thing coming up, as we've been noting, is the potential passage of long last the block grant program. And so, if I would just ask folks to think about what role the Energy Committee can play in the event of the passage of the act, I think there's the act of the program, and with a mind toward the the spreading of best practices and how we can just make sure cities are making the most of the funds. I think there's a role for the Energy Committee to play to spread the word, to make sure everybody's doing their best with these programs to generate new ideas. So I would just ask everybody to keep that in mind going forward. So I wish we could have done this in person again. I miss all of you guys, and we'll hopefully we'll have a real meeting at some point soon. But until then, I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer, and hope that, things are getting better in your cities as it relates to the pandemic. I hope this is the ninth inning, but whatever it takes, I'm sure all the mayors in this call and all our colleagues will do to keep everybody safe. So thanks again. And again, thanks, Rich, for all of your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.